Jeff Peterson has served as our market analyst in the past, and this week we asked him to answer questions not on the selling side, but on the reverse. This is something we haven't talked about before. We're talking about a short crop, and for people out there who may be over-contracted in either corn or beans, this is a different year for them. So what options do they have?
Well, I think this is a perfect time to start thinking about it. If the farmer thinks that he's actually going to be short this year, he needs to go back to the elevator or wherever he sold his crop and talk to them about what his options are. Normally what we'd expect to see is that normally some of the buyers will let them roll it to the next year. They could potentially buy out, and we need to talk a little bit more about that. So they really need to talk to their buyer and see what their choices are.
So they buy out. What price do they buy out at, though?
You know, the tendency I always have, as soon as someone comes up short, they oftentimes, Jeff, start thinking, I got to get out right away. But it really then depends on their crop insurance. So let's take, for example, revenue protection. If they've got revenue protection, which allows them still to have a better price this fall because of the harvest price, then what they need to be looking at is buying out at the October average, as close as they can to the October average. Because as you pointed out a moment ago, Jeff, if they bought out today, they'd be buying out at the current price.
Right. Let's talk about puts on bushels that you currently have. Suggestions there?
Yeah, the biggest thing is if they have bushels out there right now and they're afraid to sell them, I think coming in and buying some puts underneath them is a very good idea. That'll give them some price protection.
And then let's talk about insurance options, coverage that you might have and want to protect.
Yeah, and that would come into play on that revenue protection. Right. On the revenue protection, if they've got bushels and they know they're going to come up short, or even if they aren't going to necessarily come up short, I really do recommend that they come in and buy puts against all their bushels that they have on their insured side, because if the price drops at all going into harvest, and a lot of times we see it do that, that would still give them more revenue in their pocket.
So let's play that scenario out, because we know that if the harvest price would be double, they would get up to double, but not over double. So if the price would fall from where it is today, which is just around $8, maybe a little lower than that, how far down do you go before you're comfortable with that?
You know, they would have to drop all the way back to ultimately the price
Sure.
they had from the spring, which would take us back to like the 563 area. So the put would protect them all the way down. I'd recommend coming in and buying something with a strike price pretty close to where the market is today.
In your opinion, is this a common problem that we're seeing across the state? I know it's probably hit or miss, but this is probably something that people haven't had to deal with before.
You know what this isn't, Jeff? This is a problem that they haven't had to deal with very much at all. And it doesn't affect just Nebraska. It's actually a problem that spreads all across the Corn Belt. And that's what makes it so serious.
Do you see a lot of guys going in and playing futures right now?
Not really, not too much. I mean, even though it's tempting at times, this is a market that's going to be very volatile now and going forward. So I'd still recommend using the option side.
If you were to go in futures, anything to keep in mind there or anything to be wary of?
Exactly. If they are going to futures, the biggest thing they want to do, and let's say they wanted to make a sale and the prices were going to go much higher, make sure they've had a good discussion with their lender and make sure their lender's on board. Make sure they've also had a good discussion with their partner, whether it's their wife or another business partner, that they're comfortable if they do have to make margin calls, that they're comfortable making those.